Welcome back to the show. Our first guest is Jim Rutala, principal of Rutala Associates. Jim, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
Listen, I'm so glad that you're out here. You're a busy man doing what you do for our beautiful 48 blocks of Atlantic City. Before we get into the nuts and bolts of what's going on in that city, let's learn a little bit about you. Tell our viewers about you. You got your start and whatnot.
Okay. Well, I was born and raised in Bridgeton, not too far from the shore, and went to school at Seton Hall and got my MBA from Rutgers and then my master's in city and regional planning from Ohio State. And when I was in Ohio State, when I was in Columbus, I spent one summer away from the shore, and I realized I would never do that again. I graduated, I drove to the shore, and I've never left. My first job was with Atlantic County government, and a couple years after I started there, I became the county planning director, which at that time there was a lot of construction going on throughout the area, and as well as a number of casinos that were under construction. So it was a really exciting time. And for the last 12 years, I've had my own firm, Rutala Associates, and we do planning and energy and grant work from Toms River to Cape May, with Atlantic City being one of our major clients.
And we love it that you're doing that. And when you talk about Atlantic County, it's where I got my teeth sharpened at the Atlantic County jail. Right. It wasn't quite like what you're doing. But when you talk about Atlantic County, again, you come here, you were a Buckeye, you were there, you came back. What brought you to Atlantic City, this area? Tell us about that.
It's interesting. When I was in Columbus, I would get the press delivered to me. At that time, you could have it sent to you every day. And, there was an excitement. The government had just changed. There was now a county executive, which they had never had before. And, really they were setting up for a lot of growth in the area. So being a planner, that's where you want to be. So when I came back, I applied to Atlantic City and Atlantic County, and Atlantic County called me.
That's beautiful. Yeah. Smart. Was it Dick Squires?
Actually, it was Chuck Worthington.
Oh my gosh!
So
that's
the first.
Huh?
Yep.
Yeah. How about that? So again, our area, which we're talking about, Atlantic County, we talk. We center on Atlantic City, knowing that 25 to 30 million people a year come. So we've had our ebbs and flows throughout the decades, and it seems that Atlantic City is ripe right now for a lift, a revitalization, so to speak. Talk to us a little bit about that, but when you, two-part, Jim, tell us a little bit about that grant writing, because I know I get a lot of questions, whether it's here on the show or on the radio show, about how does that work?
Well, it's interesting. A lot of it is relationships. Right. And, we have great relationships with our legislators, both federal and state, and with the governor's office and others. And a lot of times it's really educating the policymakers, the decision makers, what you need, and basically making them understand the results of what they do. And I'll give you an example, the seawall in Atlantic City. That project was out to bid when Superstorm Sandy hit. And the Army Corps of Engineers realized that they hadn't designed it significantly enough. It had to be bigger and stronger. So they redesigned it and rebid it. It went from a $10 million project to a $60 million project. 8 different funding sources. The first funding source was $600,000. So it wasn't close, at 1% of the cost. But it was enough to educate people about the importance of that area and what connecting the boardwalk to Gardners Basin and protecting the whole inlet would mean to the city. And now it's done. Right. And those types of things are, it's important infrastructure for the growth of Atlantic City.
It sure is. And listen, folks, if you have not been out there, make sure you get your tails out there. It's a beautiful, beautiful boardwalk to wall. We were speaking about it briefly. You're seeing now families out there fishing, bike riding and whatnot. Touch on that a little bit more, because it's not just the casinos. We love our casinos. We love our restaurants and our shows. But you know what? We want those families. We want those folks moving in and saying, wow.
We have visitors coming into the city that only know Pacific Avenue, only know the casinos. And when they get to understand Gardners Basin and the inlet area and see the beauty of that area, it's a whole different view of Atlantic City. And it's one of the, as you said, it's one of the real attributes that the city has. Right now the city is spending over $3 million to renovate Gardners Basin. And Gardners Basin is the terminus of the boardwalk. So it all kind of ties together, one step at a time. You can't do everything at once.
And that's the
But
truth.
you do it one step at a time. But by Memorial Day, Gardners Basin is going to be a totally different place. The aquarium will be renovated and everything will be a little bit better.
So we're going to go off script a little bit, though, because now you're talking about Gardners Basin, and many of our viewers are familiar with it. What it was, what it used to be, what it could be, and whatnot. Can you share a little bit about what's going on and what some of the infrastructure is going to be happening?
Yeah, it's really exciting. The aquarium is being renovated. New roof is being put on now. Really, the whole shell of the building. The building's 30 years old. It needs to be renovated. So that's being done. The gift shop is going to be totally new, and there's other renovations inside. The marina area is being dredged now, and the bulkhead is being basically strengthened in that area. And then the whole park is going to be, there's going to be additional lighting, just to brighten it up. There's going to be, for security purposes, additional landscaping and other amenities throughout the park. So it'll be, and restrooms as well and other things. So by Memorial Day, it'll be another great, as it always has been, but an improved attribute of the city.
That's beautiful.
The other thing, though, when you talk about that area, I mean, that the marina area is booming. Right. I mean, you have Worstead building in the marina. You have Atlantic Shores. These are $50 million ratables. Atlantic City hasn't seen a lot of $50 million ratables, and they pay taxes.
Right.
And because of that, there's other interest in doing things in that area. So I think we're going to see some private development that'll be an offshoot of the public investment that's been made in that area.
It's so exciting. Listen, we only have about 2 minutes. We're definitely going to have you back on the show. Okay. I have to. Tell us a little bit about what's going on in the city. You could touch on the Reader's Digest version if you would mind.
Well, there's several developers in the city. What's good, and you know this, there's a new age developer in the city. There's Doors, and they are using Opportunity Zone funds, which basically is a federal program that allows a developer to avoid capital gains tax if the property appreciates. So they want to see the area develop because it's going to appreciate. So there are real developers, and you see that all over Atlantic City, and I think you're going to see some great developments in the next few years.
Yeah, we're so ripe for it right now, and it's still a great price, right, for folks to come in, whether it's to second home and whatnot, or business, like as you said. And it could be big or small. It doesn't have to be some giant project.
No, you're right. And the other thing too is, there's a strong focus on the neighborhoods, and which there hasn't always been in the past. But each of the neighborhoods now has its own community development corporation, sponsored by major players in the city like Atlantic Care and Atlantic Cape Community College and Stockton, and they're really making a difference. Each neighborhood has its own funds to do housing rehab, to do placemaking, to do other improvements in the neighborhood, to hire ambassadors, and really get involved in their own neighborhood. And it's really hands-on. So the community itself is basically pushing forward with a lot of different ideas.
That's awesome. It's one of the first jobs I took after I retired from the Department of Public Safety, was an ambassador supervisor, and loved it. Fell in love with the city. So Jim, we're out of time. Appreciate you coming on here. We're definitely going to have you back. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Folks, you stay right where you're at. We'll be right back.